Well, later this week, Elon Musk's SpaceX will go public in the United States at the same time as thousands of Australians line up to buy shares in the satellite and artificial intelligence company. Australian government officials have been privately warning that its satellite internet arm, Starlink, creates a risk to our country's sovereignty and national security. Cam Wilson is the ABC's national AI reporter and joins me now. Good morning to you, Cam. If we can just start off with exactly what Starlink is and just how popular is it in this country?
Yeah, so Starlink is the satellite internet arm of SpaceX, which is the space company, as you can probably tell from the name, that is owned by Elon Musk and is going public later this week. And what Starlink offers is internet, obviously via satellite, but what that means in practice is, many of us get our internet through the wires, through NBN, perhaps through our mobile phones, through mobile networks. Satellite internet coverage covers much more than that, it essentially covers the whole world. And that broad coverage has kind of created a lot of demand in Australia where, as people are probably familiar, sometimes it's hard to get internet in various places, particularly in regional and rural Australia. So, there's an estimated 200,000 Starlink customers in Australia. That also includes some Australian federal and state government departments who use this both in terms of being able to have internet wherever they are, but also the kind of reliability that comes from these satellites. And that has kind of made it quite an important piece of infrastructure for communications in Australia.
So why are government officials warning about its growing popularity?
Yeah, the flip side of the fact that it is this service that has been so useful and is clearly helping a lot of people, it has become so popular because people want this kind of access wherever they are, means that the reliance on it is raising red flags with government officials who say that they worry about what it means if the country becomes dependent on what is essentially a private provider. So an internal government documents from the Home Affairs Departments shows a presentation delivered by Department of Home Affairs officials saying that there is an availability risk from being dependent on SpaceX and other low Earth orbit satellite providers. That is still pretty much SpaceX. They are largely a monopoly in this space. There's not a whole lot of competition. So they're saying, the fact that we, many of these government departments, businesses and individuals rely on this means that it puts us very much at the, we depend on that service being continued to be provided by Elon Musk and this company. Now, Australia has had its run-ins with Elon Musk. SpaceX has come a cropper with regulators over some small things in Australia in the past. But, the fact that there is at times a kind of turbulent relationship with this company and the person who owns it means that, Australian government officials are saying, we need to consider this because that presents a potential weakness in terms of what Australia's laws apply to, because, of course, when it comes to space, that's actually often out of our domestic jurisdiction. And literally, how do you enforce something like this? A satellite is in space. There's not really much you can kind of do about it. This is presents quite a challenge for regulation.
Yeah, so how then exactly is this IPO of SpaceX, it going public in the United States, going to affect this?
Yeah, so when it goes public, it's going to raise, I think, an estimated $75 billion US to continue to expand its ambitions for global and, it hopes, interplanetary communications in the future. It also wants to build out a kind of artificial intelligence network with data centers in space. All these things that, sound pretty far-fetched, but of course, Elon Musk has made a career out of doing things that people have considered far-fetched. So when you think about Australians buying into this, supplying the money to fund the future business plans of this company, if it has this money, it can continue to kind of expand its services. That means that, there is the potential for Australians to become even more dependent on this. And so, as a result, I think, there's no doubt that there'll be some Australian government officials who'll be watching this very closely and to see how this affects SpaceX and Starlink going forward.